Evening, my little angel. That has just passed. Has my little love spent happy things and trips to exciting places? But it's okay if you don't go anywhere on that. We always travel everywhere together to meet many interesting friends through these story times. Memories with Toto Jan and Tome school and a new acquaintance with an extraordinary Nordic friend with carrot-colored hair awaits us today. But what's so special about that? Let's explore together. Pippi moves into Villekulla. Way out at the end of a tiny little town was an old overgrown garden, and in the garden was an old house, and in the house lived Pippi Longstocking. She was 9 years old, and she lived there all alone. She had no mother and no father, and that was, of course, very nice, because there was no one to tell her to go to bed just when she was having the most fun, and no one who could make her take the cod liver oil when she much preferred caramel candy. Once upon a time, Pippi had a father of whom she was extremely fond. Naturally, she had had a mother too, but that was so long ago that Pippi didn't remember her at all. Her mother had died when Pippi was just a tiny baby and lay in a cradle and howled so that nobody could go anywhere near her. Pippi was sure that her mother was now up in heaven, watching her little girl through a big hole in the sky, and Pippi often waved up at her and called, "Don't you worry about me, I'll always come out on top." Pippi had not forgotten her father. He was the sea captain who sailed on the great ocean, and Pippi had sailed with him in his ship until one day her father was blown overboard in a storm and disappeared. But Pippi was absolutely certain that he could come back. She would never believe that he had drowned. She was sure he had floated until he landed on an island inhabited by cannibals, and she thought he had become the king of all the cannibals and went around with a golden crown on his head all day long. "My papa is a cannibal king. It certainly isn't every child who has such a stylish papa," Pippi used to say with satisfaction. "And as soon as my papa has built himself a boat, he will come and get me, and I'll be a cannibal princess." "Hey, won't that be exciting?" Her father has bought the old house in the garden many years ago. He thought he could live there with Pippi when he grew old and couldn't sail the sea any longer. And then this annoying thing had to happen, that he was blown into the ocean, and while Pippi was waiting for him to come back, she went straight home to Villekulla. That was the name of the house. It stood there, ready and waiting for her. One lovely summer evening, she had said goodbye to all the sailors on her father's boat. They were all fond of Pippi, and she of them. "So long, boys," she said, kissing each other on their forehead. "Don't you worry about me. I'll always come out on top." 2 things she took with her from the ship: a little monkey whose name was Mr. Nielsen's. He was a present from her father, and a big suitcase full of gold pieces. The sailors stood up on the deck and watched as long as they could see her. She walked straight ahead without looking back at all, with Mr. Nielsen on her shoulder and her suitcase in her hand. "A remarkable child," said one of the sailors as Pippi disappeared in the distance. He was right. Pippi was indeed a remarkable child. The most remarkable thing about her was that she was so strong. She was so very strong that in the whole wide world, there was not a single police officer as strong as she. Why? She could lift a whole horse if she wanted to. And she wanted to. She has a heart of her own that she had bought with one of her many gold pieces the day she came home to Villekulla. She had always longed for a horse, and now here he was, living on the porch. When Pippi wanted to drink her afternoon coffee there, she simply lifted him down into the garden. Besides Villekulla was another garden and another house. In that house lived a father and a mother and 2 charming children, a boy and a girl. The boy's name was Thomas, and the girl's was Annika. They were good, well brought up, and obedient children. Thomas could never think of biting his nails, and he always did exactly what his mother told him to do. And Annika never fussed when she didn't get her own way. And she always looked pretty in her little well-ironed cotton dresses. She took the greatest care not to get dirty. Thomas and Annika played nicely with each other in their garden, but they had often wished for a playmate. While Pippi was still sailing on the ocean with her father, they often used to hang over the fence and say to each other, "Isn't it silly that nobody ever moves into that house? Somebody ought to live there, somebody with children." On that lovely summer evening, when Pippi, for the first time, stepped over the threshold of Villekulla, Thomas and Annika were not at home. They had gone to visit their grandmother for a week, so they had no idea that anybody had moved into the house next door. On the first day after they came home again, they stood by gate looking out on the street, and even then, they didn't know that there actually was a playmate so near. Just as they were standing there considering what they should do and wondering whether anything exciting was likely to happen or whether it was going to be one of the doom days when they couldn't think of anything to play. Just then, the gate of Villekulla opened and a little girl stepped out. She was the most remarkable girl Thomas and Annika had ever seen. She was Miss Pippi Longstocking out of her morning promenade. This is the way she looked. Her hair, the color of a carrot, was braided into 2 tight braids that stuck straight out. Her nose was the shape of a very small potato and was dotted all over with freckles. It must be admitted that the mouth under this nose was a very wide with strong white teeth. Her dress was rather unusual. Pippi herself made it. She had meant it to be blue, but there wasn't quite enough blue cloth, so Pippi had sewed little red pieces on it here and there. On her long thin legs, she wore a pair of long stockings, one brown and the other black, and she had on a pair of black shoes that were exactly twice as long as her feet. Her father bought these shoes for her in South America, so that Pippi could have something to grow into, and she never wanted to wear any others. But the thing that made Thomas and Annika open their eyes widest of all was the monkey sitting on a strange girl's shoulder. It was the little monkey dressed in blue pants, yellow jacket, and white straw hat. Pippi walked along the street with one foot on the sidewalk and the other in the gutter. Thomas and Annika watched as long as they could see her. In a little while, she came back, and now she was walked backward. That was because she didn't want to turn around to get home. When she reached Thomas and Annika's gate, she stopped. The children looked at each other in silence. At last, Thomas spoke. "Why did you walk backwards?" "Why did I walk backwards?" said Pippi. "Isn't this a free country? Can't a person walk any way she wants to? For that matter, let me tell you that in Egypt, everybody walks that way, and nobody thinks it's the least bit strange." "How do you know?" asked Thomas. "You've never been in Egypt, have you?" "I've never been in Egypt? Indeed I have. That's one thing you can be sure of. I've been all over the world and seen many things that's stranger than people walked backward. I wonder that you could have said if I have come along walking on my hands the way they do in farthest India." "Now you must be lying," said Thomas. Pippi thought a moment. "You're right," she said sadly. "I'm lying." "It's wicked to lie," said Annika, who had at last gathered up enough courage to speak. "We adults usually tell each other and our children that lying is the bad. My little love, how would you reply to Annika if you were Pippi? And Pippi, how will she answer? Let's find out next time." Today's story time is over. I wish my angel a good night's sleep. I kiss you long on your forehead. See you again next time.